afternoon, Christopher. One of the things I really like doing is recommending things to people, and so that's what I'm gonna do right now. First, I recommend Anathem by Neil Stephenson. Now, I know, Chris, that you have tried to read it in the past and that its sheer bulk has prevented you from having it in the places where you read. But now the book is out in paperback, which means it's substantially smaller and more affordable, so you really don't have an excuse anymore. I'll caution, however, that it does take a lot of effort to read. Not that I'm saying that if you don't finish it or don't get it, you're not intelligent, just that you decided not to put in the effort, because the book asks a lot of effort. And it's entirely reasonable for you to say you're not willing to put in that effort, but if you do, I think you get a lot out of it. Which is why I also recommend Paper Towns by John Green. It is a lighter read. Not to say that it's not thematically heavy and dark, because it is, but it's shorter and easier to read because it's a young adult novel, and I finished it in just an afternoon. If you're watching this video on YouTube, you might already know about this book because it was written by John Green, one of the Vlogbrothers, and there's a lot of hype about it, so I won't go into detail except to say that the hype is mostly justified. I'd like to recommend the video game Plants vs. Zombies. It's a really fun tower defense game, in which zombies are advancing across your lawn and you have to put up plants that will attack them by shooting seeds or poisonous fumes or whatever. I highly recommend the They Might Be Giants album, Here Comes Science. It's a new educational album for children, and unlike their previous educational albums, Here Come the ABCs and Here Come the 1, 2, 3s, this one actually teaches children things that they aren't already getting from other sources, as I've kind of already talked about with regard to science education. So it fills a bit of an educational gap, and it also happens to be really rockin'. I recommend that you join clubs, groups, and societies. These days, people don't really join a lot of them, and I think that means they miss out on something, so don't you miss out. Join things. I recommend carrying around a notebook. If you're like me, you have a lot of good ideas and you forget them within a very short time. But by writing them down, it not only helps you to remember them, but also forces you to set them out in a linguistically logical fashion. And by applying logic to them, it helps you to develop them. So it's a good idea to get into the habit of always having a notebook with you. I recommend you get a Game Boy Advance. I mean, I guess it's kind of outdated now, but that only makes it cheaper, and there really are a lot of really good games for it. I recommend the show Damages. It's a really cool show about lawyers. The first episode opens with the main character all bloody and traumatized and arrested for murder, and then immediately flashes back a couple of months to when she was a young, fresh-faced lawyer joining a famous firm. That was really alliterative and hard to say. Anyway, the arc of the season is mostly a non-linear telling of how she got from point A to point B. I haven't seen season 2 yet. I really should get on that. I recommend the original UK version of Life on Mars. It's just an awesome show. It's one of my favorite television programs of all time, and the US version simply does not compare. But it involves a lot of 70s British culture and thick Manchester accents, which I will admit is quite a legitimate barrier to the American 20-something. I recommend the films of Charlie Kaufman. He wrote Being John Malkovich adaptation and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and he wrote and directed last year's Synecdoche, New York. All of those films are fantastic and they hold up to repeat viewing. I recommend taking time out to just sit there and do nothing. Chris, do you remember our AP English teacher, Mr. Lawrence? Do you remember how at the beginning of every class he would give us the opportunity to just sit there for a moment in silence and do nothing? And do you find yourself often wishing that your college professors would do the same? People seem to think it's weird to just sit there and not do anything. And because we see it as weird, we seem to think that we need an authority figure to give us permission to do it. But we don't. We can do it whenever and wherever we want. You know what? Let's do it right now. Okay, back. Doesn't that feel good? I recommend Tumblr. It's sort of like a blog, but with the emphasis less on writing content and more with sharing things that you found that you think are cool, which is sort of like what I'm doing right now. I really recommend Bon Iver's album, For Emma, Forever Ago. I think if you like the folkish side of music even a little bit, then you will like this. I really recommend the radio show This American Life. Each week it picks a theme and tells 3 or 4 stories on that theme. It's available as a podcast. The show's about an hour long. Go give it a listen. You will thank me. I really recommend grilled cheese with buffalo chicken. Go into a deli and buy some deli sliced buffalo chicken breast, and simply make a grilled cheese by whatever your preferred method, but include the chicken in the grilled cheese. I really recommend unsubscribing. The way the internet has evolved over the past decade or two is very much in the direction of subscription. Basically, you click a button that says, whenever this person or company does something, I want to hear about it. Now that's not bad, it's very useful. But you need to be really careful about what you're subscribing to, because if you oversubscribe, all you're really doing is letting lots and lots of junk fly in your direction. So I recommend that you unsubscribe to a bunch of things that you don't really care about or are only pretending to care about. Whether it be RSS feeds, Twitter accounts, or, yes, YouTube. Hopefully you won't unsubscribe from Videobloggery, but if that's one of the things you don't really care about, then you have my blessing. Go ahead and unsubscribe, although I hope you'll come back and visit us every once in a while. The last thing I recommend is that you share the things you like with the people you like. Maybe my friends resent me for constantly pushing them towards things I like, and they think I'm pestering them, but I hope not. Anyway, I would love to hear your recommendations, Chris, and I'd love to hear the Cheese Whale's recommendations in the comments. In the future, I'd like to share more recommendations with you because Zod knows I have a ton of them. But now that I come to conclude this video, I realize I have one more recommendation. Have a nice breakfast.